probably good. And anyway, it led to breathe out the jive.
How did you go from despising astrology column, as you said at the very, very beginning, to become the most celebrated astrologist in the world?
I think because I wasn't fully invested in being a famous astrologer, that had something to do with my success. Because although I love astrology, I think it's like any other belief system, is something that you shouldn't take 100% seriously. You should always withhold at least 20% of your fanatical investment in order to let it breathe and work as metaphor, not as literal fact. That's pretty much the approach I take with all the belief systems that I borrow from. And with that approach toward astrology, I think I was able to bring more spaciousness to it, more humor, and because my ego wasn't so invested in becoming the greatest astrologer who ever lived, I was able to just appreciate astrology for itself and not for what it could make of me or what the fame or the notoriety it could make for me. I didn't really care about that. To tell you the truth, in my earlier life, I wanted to be a rock star, and that's where my ego was invested, and that's where I got caught in the ego trap. But as far as astrology, I didn't get caught in the ego trap, and I think that allowed me to fully embody a really spacious and more philosophical approach to it. And that's just part of the story. I was very lucky to come along at a time when there were no astrology columns in the alternative media in America. I was the first, really, and my timing was impeccable. No thanks to any brilliance on my part, but just because I was there at the right time, and I think my persistence really had something to do with it, because I was willing to be poor for a very long time and get paid very little to write the astrology column for the one or two papers I started writing for. And it took many years before I began to gather other newspapers that wanted to publish my column. And I got to be a better writer along the way. I got to be a better human being along the way. I got married and I had a child, and that made me a far better communicator and person. And so through this persistence and luck and some of my own talent, the column that I started writing in 1978, by 1992 began to get some momentum. And I think it was actually during the Gulf War, strangely enough, the first Gulf War, when I really went crazy and ranted in my column about American imperialism in the most poetic way that I could, in a humorous way. I got this influx of new newspapers that wanted to syndicate me, and that was really my big breakthrough point. I guess it was in the winter, spring of '91 that I moved from about 7 or 8 papers to 30 papers, and then along the way, over the years, again through persistence and because I was becoming a better writer, I added more and more papers, and eventually, because I was the first and because I was someone who valued good writing as well as good astrology, I just outpaced the competitors.
But what was the reaction to your first column to your from your boss at Good Times? How did he react? I mean, was he prepared to something like that?
Well, I wasn't completely active. There were other astrologers writing astrology columns, but they were very local. And in my case, in 1978, there had been a previous astrologer at the Good Times in Santa Cruz. He'd written for a year, and he quit, and he called his boss, my boss, a capitalist pig, and said, "I'm not going to work for you anymore." And Jay Shore, the boss, advertised for me, and I wrote a column, and he was very happy with what I wrote because the grammar was good, the spelling was good, and he didn't have to mark it up with proofreaders' marks. That was one of his criterion for hiring an astrologer. and so he was very positive. I'm very deeply in gratitude to him.
And then when you started to become more famous from 7 to 32 papers in 1992, what was the reaction of the classic astrologists, your colleagues? How were you welcomed by them, or they were hostile, or what was the
For
reaction?
the most part, no, not welcome, because most professional astrologers view horoscope columns in newspapers the same way that I did when I began, which is with disdain. This is not a way to do real astrology, to write about someone's sun sign covering 1/12 of the population. That's ridiculous. That's an absurd use of astrology. And so in the beginning especially, most astrologers, although they gave me a grudging respect for my writing ability, in general didn't like astrology columns. Over the years that's changed, because I think that I have carved out a different use of the astrology column than had been in place before. And so I think there's a greater proportion of professional astrologers who like what I do and appreciate what I do now than there was in the beginning.
This is, according to me, a very interesting part. The one when you say looking at your colleagues, I mean, or at least your predecessor, that the fact that they looked only the sun, actually, you know?
Right.
The sun, and you cannot say anything by judging only one planet, and taking out of that the destiny of many people.
Right.
What do you look, and how do you differ from the others?
Well, it's changed over a period of time. It's evolved. My premise was that what I was doing was poetry, not literal or scientific fact. And if I took it as an exercise of the imagination, in which my job was not to tell people their literal future, but rather to open their imaginations up about the possibilities in their lives, that was my initial premise, and that gave me the freedom to take off from astrological factors, but also regard what I was doing as a weekly dose of poetry, as it changed with the seasons, as the political climate, as the cultural climate of the United States changed, as summer moved into fall. And so I would take into consideration the position of the sun, the position of the moon, any major planetary aspects that were applying there, and I would certainly have that as my basis. And also feel free, give myself permission to trust in the imagination to see undercurrents, undertones, which is the prophetic role of the poet, in my view. To see deeper, to see beneath surface reality. And so I was really, from the beginning, blending the role of the astrologer with the role of the prophetic poet. I'm not saying that I did that well in the beginning, and I'm not saying that I'm great at it, but that's been my aspiration, that's been my intention.
When you say that you're blending astrology and poets, and you said something very interesting about the antennae of the
Antennae of the rays.
Of the rays,
right.
you know? This means that practically what you say for the Cancer, which is your sign, and my sign, can be applied to any other signs, or there's a certain base. Because I mean, I find everything you write very inspiring and very.
Oh, thank you.
That's exactly what you say. It opens up your imagination, and so it cannot do anything but good to the one who reads them. So if that was the aim, you definitely got it. But there's something specific to the sign, because for instance, I've read the cancer sign in your last book, and I find many things that in which I don't know if it was placebo effect or whatever or suggestion, but I could see myself in some part of it. But then, do you think that there are some tendency which are true for every sign, some kind of base traits which are common to some signs, or you don't believe that?
I do believe that there are archetypal qualities for each sign. I do believe that, and that's a premise that I work on. But and just to step back a bit, I depart from other astrologers who believe that astrology is a science. I don't believe astrology is science. I believe that astrology is an art. It's a work of magic in the Hermetic sense of the word, not in stage magic, but in the Hermetic sense of the word. And as a result, there's always something about what I do that's a little beyond rational explanation. And part of why what I do works is because I think I have a relationship with my audience that is very symbiotic. There is an interaction between me and my audience that's developed over the years, and in a sense, I think I am almost a creation of my audience, in the sense that I read them, they read me, we read each other. Over the years, I've become almost like a feedback. I've become a product of the feedback that they give me, both through their literal emails and snail mails and phone messages, but also through the dream time. I'm with my readers when I'm sleeping. I'm getting messages from my readers because I believe there is that kind of communication that is both literal and physical and spoken, but there is this other kind of communication that takes place on astral levels, if you will. And so over a period of time, those people who read the Cancer sun signs are basically telling me how I'm doing. Am I reading you correctly? They're telling me yes, no, change this, fix this. This is what my life is right now. Understand, this is over a period of now 30 years. So this is a very long time to be learning the nuances of what it means to be a Cancer, or to be a Leo, or to be a Scorpio. And so part of what my knowledge, part of what the source of my inspiration comes from my study of the archetypes of the signs, as has been laid down by traditional astrologers, and some comes through this intimate interchange with the actual Scorpios and the actual Leos out there who are telling me how I'm doing and what they want and who they are. So yes, I do think that when I write it for Cancer, it's for Cancer. It's not for Scorpio. The Scorpio is welcome to read it, and maybe they can get something out of it, but I give it in the spirit of this is for you as a Cancer.
This means also that every week you calculate the position of the planets vis-a-vis of the sign,
right?
In this case, Cancer.
Right.
So you do the job every week.
That's right. And
you try to understand what's the influence of those position towards the sign.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And there's a system that I use. I use the house system so that, for instance, for someone born under the sign of Cancer, the sun is in the 6th house right now during this particular time of the year, and that's a particular area of activity in human life. It relates to one's health.
Is where?
The 6th house. The sun is in the 6th house for Cancers.
Yeah.
That tends to light up the areas of our lives known as work, as health, as adjustments that need to be made, of shifts that need to be accomplished in response to something not going quite right, or course corrections. and many other things. But that's the basics of the sixth house,
Okay.
and that's part of the matrix that guides my meditations on
Okay.
how to approach cancer right now in December.
Um, you define your spirituality as the mix of Kabbalah, Sufi, Tantrism, a certain kind of Christianity. Practically, it's a kind of mix of many, many different things. Practically, what do you mean by this mix? And do we really need a religion?
Do we need
A religion?
a religion?
Yeah,
Well, that's
as you
for each
mean.
person.
Yeah.
I leave that up to each person.
Hmm.
I don't. I feel like I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person. I don't follow any traditional religion, and I don't. It's fine if other people want to do that, as long as they don't get in my stuff and tell me that I should think like them. As long as they keep to themselves and practice what they want to practice and don't try to kill the world in order to convert, that's fine with me. I personally don't want or don't need to go to a church and follow a given set of dogmas about that was created hundreds of years ago. On the other hand, I do find great value in the great teachers of the past, and I think it's very important for me to realize how little my ego is, and how little me as a person is, and how much there out there that has been created for me to learn about. And part of what I'm really attracted to is the spiritual teachings of the world.
Among the things that I said, Kabbalah, Tantrism, and I forgot feminism in a way,
Right.
but then we will come back to that later, the relationship with women and your approach. What were the influences that influenced you most?
The Western
People.
Hermetic tradition,
Okay.
which is a lot of people in the West don't know about the Western Hermetic tradition. In California, the Eastern spiritual approach is by far the most popular, when we've got this perfectly wonderful Hermetic tradition that goes back millennia, which is under the organizational principle of Kabbalah, and under that is alchemy, astrology, tarot, and it's a whole system of thought and a philosophy that has been developed over hundreds of years, and there are particular schools that teach it. They don't advertise in the same way that New Age schools do, but I've been a member of one in America since I was 25, and I've been studying in that school for that length of time. And the most famous philosopher that came out of the Western Hermetic tradition, unfortunately, was Aleister Crowley. But he and
Which one?
Aleister Crowley. But he, in my opinion, was really a pretty bad example of that philosophy. He was the most notorious practitioner that's come out of that. But most of the schools that teach the Hermetic wisdom are very quiet and not about proselytizing and attracting converts. And it's a form of Kabbalah that is not strictly Jewish. It's actually a Christian Kabbalah. And so for me, there's no contradiction between being very attracted to the teachings of Jesus Christ and to the Kabbalah at the same time. Jesus Christ was a feminist revolutionary who had no possessions and hung around with the rabble. And I don't care what anybody says, Mary Magdalene was his first disciple and his most famous disciple, and that's unheard of for any man back then. And so he's always been a very important force in my life.
Going to your relationship or your consideration of women, you've been quoted as saying that you are a macho feminist.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
Well, early on,
And also a lesbian male.
right? You read a lot.
I've done my homework. Yeah.
Early on, I saw that a lot of men who wanted to be feminists were wimps. They were trying to be feminists in the same way that women were feminists, and I didn't think that was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a man who was a feminist. I wanted to fully embody my masculinity and also be an advocate for feminism. And over the years, I've had a lot of experiments and explorations about what that meant. But to be a macho feminist means to advocate for feminism as a strong, forceful male would, and not as a wimpy, passive male would do. And I think it's the original title for my book, The Televisionary Oracle, was A Feminist Man's Guide to Picking Up Women. In other words, the joke there is that to be a feminist man is actually potentially one of the best ways to attract women that you can come up with. And I meant it somewhat ironically, of course, and to mock myself for my own pretensions, because I do know men who actually put on their feminist airs in order to get girls. But to me, it's also a spiritual revolutionary act, because I'm convinced that unless the feminine rises to equal power with the masculine, that the human civilization is probably going to end. And that's one of the reasons I'm such a staunch advocate of not only political power for women, not only business power for women, at this point, Norway has laws that mandate, I think, 40% females in their parliament, and but also in the boardroom. They have laws mandating, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but there has to be a given proportion of women in the corporate boardrooms. I'm all for that kind of thing, and a lot of countries are way ahead of the United States. And that, I think there's something like 12% women in Congress right now, and it's even lower in the corporate boardroom.
In Italy, it's even worse than that.
Is it?
Yeah. Why so much stress on women? Do you think they are better than men? In which respect?
I don't think they're better than men. They just have something different to offer, and what they have to offer has been repressed and has been denied. And one of the important things that they have to offer is the art of relationship. The special, and I don't want to overgeneralize, some women aren't like this, but what the feminine principle, the divine feminine principle, is to relate, to create intimacy, to create contact and connection. I was just reading recently that somebody was describing autism as just a little bit of an exaggeration of the masculine mind. Autism being an inability to relate socially and to connect with people and to empathize with other people and to understand what other people are thinking and feeling. And because men do have that tendency to put relational skills way down the bottom, that's part of the reason why we're in the mess that we're in. And so, no, I don't think that relational skills are more important than the individuating skills that the masculine has specialized in. But we need them to be balanced. We need them to have equal power and appreciation.
Apart from William Blake, that you quote extensively, what are the thinkers that influenced you most?
Carl Jung is one of the most important thinkers, I think, of the 20th century. He's all over my thinking. he single-handedly recovered alchemy from its misunderstanding. Alchemy was thought to be the work to convert lead into gold, and literal lead into literal gold. But the real alchemists, which Jung discovered, were about turning metaphorical lead into metaphorical gold, but through the transformation of one's own inner darkness. And I think Jung's work showed me how important it was for me to confront my share of the world's darkness, my share of the world's evil, and to see how it lived in me. I think that's one of the most important messages I had to give people, is that it's wonderful to attack evil in the world, but in order to earn the right to do that, you have to deal with the evil, the darkness, the immaturity, the unrightness in yourself. And studying Jung helped me to understand that. Rudolf Steiner is another important philosopher for me. I would put him in the Western Hermetic tradition. There are a number of Western Hermetic thinkers that probably, for most people, are unknown. Paul Foster Case is one of my teachers, and not many people have even heard of him. Dion Fortune is another one.
Paul Foster Casey?
Paul Foster Case, C-A-S-E, you know. And Ann Davies, who is his successor, also a Western Hermetic teacher. Patti Smith was a great influence on me. The person who showed me that that it was possible to bring the Dionysian spirit into art in a way that was well crafted, was also had an intellectual component that wasn't just sheer chaotic drunkenness, but that had a crafted edge to it. And she was my mentor, not literally, I didn't study with her, but she was my mentor in teaching me that, which has been an important part of my life.
On the contrary, you don't have a very, at least with, you don't have a very good attitude vis-a-vis of journalists, writers, and film directors that can be very dangerous prophet, you say, because they put too much stress on bad news. Is that correct?
Well, yes, but especially if in their invocation of violence and misery and destruction, they offer no redemption. They offer no redemptive vision. And that's a big problem, I think. And of course, there are individual artists and filmmakers and musicians who paint a very dark picture of the world that I respect and I like, but it's the sheer numbers of them, the grotesquely large proportion of artists who are given to that invocation of darkness without any urge for redemption. That is so disappointing to me and difficult for me to deal with.
So the difference, according to you, is between the one you respect and the one you respect less is the fact that there is a chance of redemption and no chance of redemption at all?
That would be one, right.
Yeah. I don't know, for instance, Martin Scorsese, like The Departed, have you seen it?
I haven't seen that.
Or anyway, in Martin Scorsese's movies, this clash between good and evil is very often present, and it's not the good part that always win. But still, I mean, it's powerful in describing this clash.
They're great artists, and
Yeah.
a lot of these people who create these visions, and that's what is so dangerous about them is, and any one of them by themselves, I can't find fault with them. They're doing what they came to do in this moment of history, but it's the sheer number of them that add up to this this flood of black magic that overwhelms the mass audience. And so, yeah, I can see Scorsese as, man, he's a great artist. And from that point of view, I can appreciate it. But the numbers of artists who, there's a musician named Sufjan Stevens. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's pretty much my favorite musician. He, I don't know if you know that song, Kazimir Pulaski's birthday, or Kazimir Pulaski Day. And it's a song about a young man who has a flirtation with a woman who's dying of bone cancer. There's that's a desolate vision. And he paints it so effectively. He's a wonderful artist. But there is some glimmer of light in the vision that he presents. I wouldn't say it was hope, but some opening that he makes in that darkness that makes you go gasp with, oh, there's something more here. It's not just death and destruction and there's nothing else. There's some other breath present here that we can know about. It's mysterious. He's not naming it specifically, but it gives us this moment of loving life at the same time that we're being told this desolate vision of this girl dying.
Yeah, because going back to the previous question, I mean, these dangerous prophets and the bad news versus good news. You are a terribly well-read person and a very smart one. So, don't you think that it's a little bit? I'm trying to define in a way my category here, but
Right.
it risks to be a little naive to not to talk about the bad news, because I mean it's true that it seems that newspaper, I mean, as the English says, if it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
So it's a general rule and very cynical rule of journalism to emphasize bad news because, as you know,
Right.
they sell better. I mean, this is true, and newspaper, mostly daily newspaper, I mean, they really stress that much. But it's also true, as you said before, regarding Jung, that you have to confront your shadow in a way. I mean, and the shadow is also a collective shadow because, I mean, there are wars, terrible wars. Tomorrow I'm leaving for El Paso, Texas, and then I go to Ciudad Juarez. And I'm not very happy to go there, to be completely honest with you.
Oh my God.
But I have to go there. And so, I mean, and really incredibly bad things happening in Juarez. I mean, people are decapitated and stuff like that. So this is a part of the reality. It's not that if I will write an article about you, which is very inspiring, but then I will write also an article about Juarez, which I mean, me as a human being, I would love that Juarez don't exist, but it does exist.
Right.
So my duty as a reporter is to I mean, in a way, transmit your message of hope and of self-betterment, but then I also have to give the other. Don't you think that, I mean, we risk to be naive by saying that we should emphasize the good news?
That's not what I say.
Yeah, okay.
In my piece, Evil is Boring, I say all I ask for is a proportion. I would say I would accept 20% of the news to be uplifting and redemptive and hope inspiring. That's all I ask. I've been a left-wing revolutionary since I was a yippie in my teens. Abbie Hoffman was my mentor back then, and I'm still that way. I'm still a yippie, and I'm absolutely totally opposed to the American military machine. I'm totally opposed to the war in Afghanistan. I've been totally opposed to the war in Iraq, and the WikiLeaks. I'm all for them, all for the revelations. I think that transparency that's coming out is just wonderful. And I want that stuff reported. All I want, in addition, and I'll say that is 20%. If we could get 30% of the airwaves, 20% of the newspapers pages, and it's not. It's about it's maybe 3% at this point, and I don't think that's unreasonable. It's not a call for repression. I think recently Russia and government actually began to require that the newspapers publish a certain percentage of good news, and I'm more in the libertarian socialist end of things, so I'm not about that. But I want this to be self-enforced. I want people to question their own motivation. And someone like you, I think that's beautiful. You're going to talk with Rob Brezsny, and then you're going to Juarez, and that's all I can ask is for someone who is willing to cover both those polarities.
And going back to the influences, you already quoted John Stevenson. Who are some other people, contemporary people, who you like in the arts? I mean, be them writers, musicians, directors, people you like and you find inspiring. And I mean,
Leonard Cohen is one of the great artists of our time, I'm convinced. He's deeply spiritual person. He even spent, I think, 6 years in a monastery. Very devout Buddhist, and yet that doesn't result in some sort of party line Buddhist set of lyrics. He's absolutely an artist. He's just cutting away the story, the cover stories that we're told, and getting to the roots, getting to what's beneath our lives. And I'm a great admirer of his work. He's a poet who's a musician. He's a spiritual poet, a spiritual musician who's speaking to a lot of different people. He's not just ghettoized in some little corner preaching to the choir. I'm a tremendous admirer of him. I'm not, I don't see that many films because films there are so few films that I'm aware of that present a vision of the world that I'm interested in. So I wouldn't say that I don't have any favorite filmmakers.
Do you watch TV?
I do. I watch. What do I watch? I just watch a couple different science fiction shows, basically, American science fiction shows.
No late night show, stuff like that. Huh?
No.
And literature-wise, fiction-wise, who are your favorite authors, writers?
Fiction writers?
Yeah.
Right now?
Yeah.
I haven't enjoyed Don DeLillo's books, the last couple ones, but he was a big influence on me.
I didn't like them either, the last ones.
Yeah. But his earlier books were very important to me.
Yes.
Salman Rushdie's books were, I haven't read his last two, but he was very important to me. I'm not reading a lot of fiction these days. I like to read poetry, and my daughter goes to college and studies writing, and there's a poet named Joseph Lease who was one of her teachers, and is really interesting to me. I love Galway Kinnell's poetry. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Galway Kinnell.
Once you've done, at least I've read, you went to the highway and gave away money.
Several times I did that.
Yeah, several times.
Right.
Are you aware that this is something that one of the character of Kurt Vonnegut, God bless you, Mr. Water does?
No, I didn't know that.
Huh. because
What was the book?
God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. I think
Uh-huh.
it's the title. Yeah.
I've read several of
Yeah.
Vonnegut's books.
Yeah, because I had this impression that you could be a fan of Kurt Vonnegut.
I do like
I
Vonnegut.
am, but
Yeah, I love Vonnegut's books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the main character of that book, which is a great book, and I strongly advise you to read it, is a millionaire actually.
Uh-huh.
He's the son of a family of millionaire, maybe billionaire, but he is completely crazy, according to his father at least, who spent all of his life to make this fortune, and in the setup a kind of foundation to give away all the wealth of his father that he wants to kill him, or anyway made him declare completely full because he doesn't want his empire to be thrown away. But the guy asked the call of this actually one room foundation. They say, how may I help you? And he gives away the money,
Uh-huh.
all of his money, and they said that I found some resemblance with the things you've done. Why did you do it anyway? Several times to go and give away money.
Well, it was partly for my own curiosity to see how people would respond because, as you may know, a lot of people have problems with generosity, receiving generosity, and that's what I found in my experiments was that a majority of people were very suspicious of the offer that I was making. They thought, and probably rightfully so, because often when somebody reaches out to give you something, there are strings attached. They want to sell you something, or they want to rope you in to get you to get interested in their product. And so I understood that, but I was really intrigued to find out that the poorer a person was, the more inclined they were to be suspicious of the gift, and that the wealthy people who would stop wouldn't have any problems. The people in the Mercedes that would stop and roll down their window, and I would hold out some money, they would take it, and they would, is there any more? And the poor people would maybe, and there were a couple people who slowly drove by me, wouldn't stop. They got back on the highway later and came back again to the same exit ramp, and just to see if I was still there. So it was more for my curiosity to see how people responded, and I did want to create a kind of icon of pure generosity. I wanted to offer that as part of the archetype that I aspired to embody. Generosity without any strings attached. I'm not going to ask of anything from you in return. You don't have to buy anything from me. You don't have to believe what I want you to believe. This is just me serving as a channel from the universe, showering you with blessings. I wanted to literally embody that and make it a part of my persona, but also how that felt.
This goes back in a way to original Christianity. I mean, give something without asking
Yes.
anything back.
Yes.
Even if you said that you don't read a lot of fiction recently, your columns are literally filled with quotation, very interesting and very idiosyncratic quotation. How do you manage to read so much? What do you read now? What are you reading? I mean, what is your reading diet? Because I mean, you can find almost everything inside. I mean, from poets to some art, science, facts, or really whatever, or a woman in Indonesia that made enlarge the penis of the person who contacted her. Stuff. I mean,
What was that one?
there was a lady in Indonesia who was able Mac erot, something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, very, very the most different things you can think of. I mean, how do you get to know those things? What do you read? What is your
Well, I've been doing it for
reading
years.
diet?
I've been reading for years, and there was this point in my 20s I decided that I was going to be a poet. I was going to be a spiritual aspirant, and I wasn't going to work. I was not going to work for a living. That's what I decided. I wanted the time to read, and I wanted the time to absorb culture. And I was extremely poor for 20 years, and I followed that path. And so during that time, I read Anais Nin and read scientific articles on embryology and read the New York Times and read the National Enquirer, and that habit has stayed with me. I'm a omnivorous collector of all possible input coming from the universe, because I regard anything as potentially my teacher. Some sources are perhaps more reliable than other sources. It's more likely that I'm going to find accurate factual information in the New York Times than in the Weekly World News. But at any one time, it's unpredictable who is going to offer something that is interesting and useful to me. And so my main intention has been to be curious, is to cultivate my curiosity and to be ready to be surprised. And of course, after all these years of having gone to the library and bought books, now I have the internet where the entire library of everything humanity's ever written is a minute away at the most. And so I don't think it's a pretty easy skill to develop, to be able to tune in to a lot of different places. That's something that any writer, I think, does nowadays. And so I'm just continuing what I did before the internet, but it's a little faster now.
So, I mean, how is like your typical day, from when you wake up to when you do interviews so late? What?
Well, my life goes through different phases.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing now isn't necessarily what I do all the time. I really like that restless spirit, and I was a performer for many years, first in rock music and then as a performance artist, and I've done well over 1,000 performances. That's not what I'm doing right now. I'm living a more hermetic lifestyle, but my mode tends to be to combine structured activity, structured study, research, with the principle of the wandering around, whether that's wandering around the internet, wandering around in downtown San Francisco, wandering out on the creek a mile away and seeing what the animals have to say or the trees have to say. And so each day might be different, each week might be different. I might be in a different mode here and there, but I really try to apply in a practical way that principle of gathering what is there to learn today. I love to learn. That's just one of the most pleasurable things that I can imagine. There's an erotic quality to it for me, and furthermore, since I've been doing this job over the years, there's often what the added thing is, when a particular learning has some application that I can tell people about, or create art from, create writing from, or music from. So there's this curiosity, this desire to learn, that's combined with, oh, this would be great to tell Scorpio this week. And so there's a double thrill there. There's the learn thing and just what it means to me and how it excites me, and the excitement of how can I craft this into an inspiration that will contribute to the liberation of the Sagittarius person for December 9th. And so that can take form of just sitting in front of my computer or talking with friends. I mean, my friends are used to me having a little notebook and scribbling things about what they're saying and getting ideas from what they recount to me, or just being alone and wandering out in the world.
You don't have a typical list of newspaper or websites that you check every day.
I yeah, but I try to vary it too, so I don't get too stuck in my ways. I try to, I mean, for a long time I stopped going to the Drudge Report because it just offends me, but I have started going back there again because I think it's important for me to know how the people I don't agree with think, as well as the people I agree with. And so the whole point for me is to keep blowing open my mind, to keep it from getting into a rut, and keep introducing myself to some new twist. I mean, how did I end up on the page where they were selling bacon car fresheners? You know, they were bacon aroma car fresheners. I don't know how I got there. It might have been through Reddit.com or something like that, one of those news aggregate sites. I do like to go to this news aggregate site, Metafilter and Fark and Reddit and Dig, and those are miscellaneous things. I enjoy going to conspiracy sites. That always tickles me and amuses me, and I check out the New York Times on a regular basis. I go to CNN. I love the science reporting in New York Times. It's just so fabulous, and it's. I mean, Natalie Angier. I don't know if you're familiar with her science writing in the New York Times. She just whacks me every time, and she's the one. She did an extensive study of the bonobo apes. Are you familiar with them?
Yes.
Yeah. Very. I mean, one of the apes that deals with conflict through eros rather than violence and conflict. You know, they. Anyway, I love Natalie Angier and the science reporting in the New York Times, and that's a place where I go on a regular basis, as an example.
And you, once you stumble upon a phrase, a quote that can apply to some sign or which has got a particular existential meaning to you, you took notes and then you use it afterwards.
Often when the quote strikes me or the fact strikes me, I'll almost immediately have in mind where it belongs. They often go together. Not always. Sometimes. Like I was just last week I was going over notes that I made a year ago that didn't mean anything to me at the time, but I save all those notes. I have notes going back to 1994, and I can't remember specifically what it was, but there's something that I had a blank about, but I still wrote it down. Suddenly caught fire for me a year later, and. So sometimes it has to go through a gestation period. But again, for me, it's a magical collaboration with my audience that transcends my ability to explain rationally, and so I'm not sure how the process works. There's some magic in there that is working beyond my capacity to understand it.
Since you've stressed this point a couple of times, the collaboration with the audience, how does it work? I mean, you got a very popular website, and people can write you. What is your policy? How do you? I mean, I imagine you would be flooded by email.
Right.
How do you behave? How do you choose which one to respond?
I don't respond to that many. I respond to a fairly small proportion.
To be possible.
But I read them all. I read every single one of them. And I was just, this past week, I was quoting a story that had been told me by a Scorpio guy who had responded to something that I had written. I had quoted a Neruda poem. about wandering, uh, wandering in the wilderness and finding a well that, and I can't remember the exact Neruda quote, but this guy on Facebook responded to the quote that I gave, and he said, I was in the wilderness once, and I found a well, and I found a bucket that had a hole in it, and I was able to throw the bucket down, and I got a bucket of water, which was just what I needed. Probably if the bucket didn't have a hole in it, it would have been stolen and it wouldn't be there. And so it was great that it had a hole in it. So anyway, this is a message from a reader that I quoted in my Scorpio horoscope, and sometimes it's not quite as literal. Sometimes a reader will give me an idea that I'll take and run with, but in this case I quoted this literal Facebook entry. So just to finish that thought, the Capricorn woman had written to me and said that her boyfriend was very thoughtful about bringing her flowers, but they were the ugliest flowers imaginable. And what should she do? So I quoted her letter, and I gave a response, and that was the Capricorn horoscope for that week.
At the very beginning, you said you wanted to be, that you accepted the gig as a columnist for the Good Times because it was a way to get paid to be a poet in disguise.
Right.
How poetry can come handy in everyday life, according to you?
So, ask the question again.
Okay. How poetry can be useful in everyday life?
For me, poetry is about precise use of language, and that's a lost art in America anyway. And if I can contribute to people understanding that the language that they choose to render their experience actually helps shape that experience, if I can give that to them, I'm committing poetry, if you will. I'm giving them poetry therapy. And then the other aspect of the poetic gift that I aspire to give is to exercise their imaginations, to show them that imagination isn't just something that is prone to imagining terrible things and fearful things, but that imagination is something that you can play with, that can be the source of your creativity, that can help you bring new influences into your life that if you stay in your literal mind is impossible to do. So the gift of precise language, the gift of the liberated imagination, I think those are two potential gifts that poetry has to offer, that I aspire to give.
This imagination part is very important in what you say. I mean, you say also that what happened to people is what they believe will happen to them. Word lives on the fuel of self-fulfilling prophecies. Can you speculate a little bit more about this?
It's a charged subject because that idea has been co-opted and literalized by the New Age movement in America, turned into simplistic formulas, as exemplified in the movie The Secret, and the way that the simplistic portrayal is that all you have to do is imagine something and it will come true. And it's much more complicated than that, and it really is something that is the basis of the Western Hermetic tradition. And there are volumes and volumes and volumes speaking about the power of the imagination, but with all these subtleties, all this instruction on the proper use of the imagination, because the imagination is also potentially, as Guruji said, a great enemy. It interferes with our ability to see reality as it is. throws up all sorts of fantasies that are untrue and fears that interfere with us being able to perceive what's really in front of us. So there is that negative side of imagination. And furthermore, if what you imagine is not accompanied by ethical behavior and a sense of integrity, and also the emotional power that must go with the imagination, then it doesn't matter how clearly you imagine the Mercedes-Benz that you want to have materialize in your life by March. And so it's, as I said, it's a charged subject. It's a loaded question, and so I always hesitate to speak about it glibly. I don't want to speak about it glibly. It's not something that can be easily formalized, and I've spent the last 30 years trying to master the proper use of the imagination. I'm not there yet. I'm still working on it. But I do know this, that that's one of my main tasks in this life, is the proper use of the imagination. And I suspect that it's pretty important for most other people too. If I can serve as a force in the world to help people see that, and if I can help build their power to use the imagination to liberate as a liberating force, then I'm pretty happy. So no, it's not as simple as I want to have a dream home on the mountainside in Maui, and it happens. No, it's a lot more complex than that. However, it is important what you hold in your imagination. That it does have attractive power. If you're constantly living in fear, that tends to be the kinds of experiences that you attract to you, that feed your fear. If your imagination predominates with generous thoughts, with thoughts of caring for other people, that tends to be the kinds of experiences that come in your life.
In fact, I've read myself the book The Secret because I wanted to understand what was behind the kind of planetary success, because it's huge. I mean, also in Italy, there has been all over the world, and I've stumbled in these rules of attraction, but I had really some hard time, because it seems like the way they put it is that if you really think about money, you can have money. If you think about that girl, no matter how good looking she is, you will have and unfortunately, life doesn't go like that. I mean, there is at least a dark side of imagination itself, or at least there are some limits.
There are some limits.
How do you move yourself? I mean, because it seems that all the time you work on this very risky line, blurring line between being so full of good books, good, very. Let me put it this way. It's like you work on the thin line between new age and serious stuff, and you manage to stay on the serious stuff, but it's always like if you are on a tightrope. And how do you manage to stay on the good side of this? Because
some people would say I don't, and I get people all the time telling me, dismissing me as another New Age teacher. To me, the New Age has become almost like a slur. It's a pejorative term. It's like calling an Irish person a Mick, and I think that's unfortunate. It generally, when someone invokes the term New Age, it means somebody that has a very low level of discernment, who's gullible in believing all sorts of lunatic ideas, and it just doesn't think very deeply. That tends to be an outsider's view of what it means to be New Age. Of course, I don't want to be in that category. However, the New Age is informed by a deeper well of wisdom that wasn't invented in the 20th century, that goes back millennia, and that's exactly what the Western Hermetic tradition is. I consider myself a practitioner of the Western Hermetic tradition, not a New Ager. For most people, that distinction is lost because they don't know what the Western Hermetic tradition is. But if there are some resemblances, just as for me, the resemblance between the Christian church as it exists among the evangelicals today and the teachings of Jesus Christ, there is some connection, but and there is some connection between New Age philosophy and the Western Hermetic tradition that's important and valid, but I hope that I stay on the side of having intellectual integrity, because my emphasis is on the teachings of the Western Hermetic tradition, not specifically on New Age teachings. And just to clarify a little, one of the main principles of the Western Hermetic tradition is that having a strong intellectual foundation is crucial to doing spiritual work. Intuition is something that comes after you've done the research, you've studied the facts to the best of your ability, you've thought with discrimination, you've tried to maintain your objectivity and shed your personal biases, you've questioned your own emotional involvement. It's at that point that you have the right to seek intuitive understanding or spiritual experiences. And if you don't have that foundation, then it's likely that your so-called spiritual experiences are going to be filled with delusion and fantasy. So I think that's the ultimate answer to your question, is as a practitioner of the Western Hermetic tradition, I value, for lack of a better word, scientific, empirical ways of knowing things. That's an important approach for me.
What are your critics, if we may say so, or your differences between the rules of attraction that, for instance, The Secret posits? Because, again, when you were quoted saying that people, life is what they believe they will be, I mean, what this self-fulfilling prophecy thing. What is the limit, according to you, to this self-fulfilling prophecy?
Well, it's much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Just to use as an example,
Yeah.
if I visualize an hour a day that I'm going to be a concert piano player in 3 years, but I don't have much musical ability and I don't practice, that's not going to happen. And furthermore, I would say that if I don't have if I don't cultivate a strong ethical approach to my dealings with other people, it's not going to happen. The universe doesn't work to reward me surely because I have some greedy fantasy. It rewards me possibly, maybe, if I play the piano 6 hours a day for 5 years, and if I was lucky enough to have my mother and father pass on to me a musical ability. I listened to all the great piano music of the world and studied the way other people have played it, and furthermore that I aspire to make my piano playing, the gift that I've been given, a gift for other people. Those would be some of the considerations that would have to go into the secrets formula working for me.
It's much tougher than The Secret.
Well, and what bugs me, and I think what bugs people that criticize the New Age is that it just seems so materialistic and so greedy, and that does bug me. It's to me the universe is a mysterious place, and just because you want something doesn't mean you're going to get it. It's the universe does, as the book says, the universe showers us with blessings, but those blessings aren't necessarily what the people in the secret call blessings. It might be a really difficult health challenge. That might be an incredible blessing in someone's life. It might be, say in my case, being poor for 20 years. That was an incredible blessing because it ensured that when I did begin to make a little bit more money, that I was going to maintain my left-wing revolutionary ideals. And so in that case, for me, being poor for 20 years was a great blessing. So the blessings that come our way aren't necessarily what the secret would say. Or that William Volman, I don't know if you know that writer. He's one of my favorite writers. William Volman, Vollman.
Oh yes, he's great. Yes, he's great.
Puts himself in. He would go to Juarez for 2 months. He would move in with a prostitute.
Yes.
And
he's great. Yes.
Anyway, he says the thing that makes him happy, the thing that's in essence what's blessing for him, is to do the most difficult task he can imagine. And there's that other quote from the sculptor
Henry Moore,
which I love. The important thing is to do something every day with all your might, and the most important thing is it's not something you can ever accomplish entirely.
Okay, no, it's very clear the distinction between you and the secret.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. I wish I could explain that to.
Okay. Some other question then we're done. Because otherwise, I mean, the others, don't you think that they risk to create a delusional world? And they don't I mean, because in a way, this can be a critic which can be done also to you to foster a too optimistic view in your readers, because in a way it seems you give hope to everyone, or you foster the hope in every one of your reader, and you once you explain that if you are, even if this is a kind of manipulation, but it is a manipulation for good, because it's a optimist manipulation.
Well, I'm balancing all the toxin. In a sense, I'm medicine. And yes, I do sometimes go too far in emphasizing the redemption that's possible, and I'd go too far in suggesting to people that they can liberate their imaginations and have their imaginations be a potent tool. I go too far in that direction. But I guess the way that I excuse that is that people are getting the exact opposite message all over the place all the time. And my little contribution is just a little tiny drop of medicine compared to the toxins they're taking in.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because this was crossing another question, which is, you have already half replied to that, but this was more specific about pronoia. Don't you think that to say that the world conspire for our own good is a little bit too much? Or do you think that's a realistic proposition?
I do, but it's not that the world conspires in our ego's behalf. It doesn't necessarily conspire to give us a $10 million house and the most beautiful mate and the fame that we imagine we want. That's not what that's not the goodness that the universe is conspiring to give us. It's conspiring to give us the goodness that will make our souls thrive. And I use those terms ego and soul in fairly specific ways, and it's an important distinction. So everything for me is a hypothesis. It's not a belief. I know that sounds crazy from an astrologer, but I do propose that the universe is in fact a friendly place. It is here. I subscribe to the anthropomorphic principle, which is a scientific idea that the universe actually was created for people. That it is the perfect place. That everything about the way that the universe is set up is designed to create human beings, at least in this solar system. For example, the sun is just the right distance from the Earth, so it doesn't fry us, it doesn't freeze us. And it's not that the universe is conspiring for me to be a famous astrologer. The universe is conspiring to give me the experiences that educate my soul and teach me what it means to love in an intelligent way, to communicate with other people in a way that helps to liberate them and inspire them. That's what the universe is conspiring to do in my particular case. The universe isn't conspiring to make me live forever or make me happy every day of my life or give me all the money that I need. That's not the kind of conspiracy that I'm talking about. But it is here to give me exactly what my soul needs. And I feel that's true. That's my hypothesis about the way the universe works in relation to everyone else. And that's a big picture, and you would justly say, and anyone would justly say, well, what about the baby in Sudan who watches his mother raped and killed in front of him? You know, what possible way could you construe that to be a blessing for his soul? And I'm not going to answer that in some facile, glib way because it's a long conversation. But I will say that in the Western Hermetic tradition, which has been the philosophy that I've studied, there is the concept of reincarnation, and that our time on Earth is a very long time, that any individual soul is here many, many, many times. And so the suffering that I might experience in any one particular lifetime, yes, is actually valuable in the long run for the particular thread of evolution that we are following.
You're taking the long run, yeah.
Very long run, hundreds of thousands of lifetimes.
Even if John Maynard Keynes used to remind us that in the long run we'll all be dead.
Without what? Without
John Maynard Keynes,
right.
The economist, used to joke about the fact that in the when someone was proposing long run proposition to fix the economy, he used to say, in the long run we'll all be dead.
Well, we'll all be dead many times, is what I would say. We'll be dead over and over again, and we'll be alive again and again. When I was 20 years old, a psychic told me, it was actually a collaborative experience, meditation, that I was in one of my past lifetimes, I was a retarded boy who died when he was 17. But there is some purpose in that contributing to my life now. for among other things, it grew my ability to empathize, so that even though I came into this particular life relatively privileged, I have this background of having suffered a lot in a fairly recent lifetime. And I don't know if that's literally true, but I do think it's metaphorically true, and in the long run that some of my lifetimes have provoked in me an ability to empathize with the suffering of others. And one of the answers that I give to the example of the Sudanese boy is that the outrage that those of us in the West feel about that boy and his experience raises the power of our empathy, raises the power of our compassion, motivates us to ensure that this kind of thing won't happen again. I think you have the Italian version of Pronoia doesn't include, of course it doesn't. I wrote a revised and expanded version of Pronoia that came out last year, which with a greatly expanded essay of Glory in the Highest. And among other things in that essay, I talked about how the whole movement among Westerners to work in behalf of those less fortunate than them is a relatively new movement in the history of the world. In America, it really originated with the anti-slavery movement in the 1830s and 1840s. And this has increased tremendously in the last century and a half. The whole notion of countries giving money to other countries, as in the Marshall Plan and in a lot of international organizations, this is unprecedented in world history. This hasn't happened before. And as Paul Hawken describes in his book, Blessed Unrest, he talks about there is a revolution happening in the sheer number of people who are committed to bringing social justice, environmental improvement, and economic equality to the world. There are over 1 million organizations worldwide, growing all the time, devoted to this. Now, this is unheard of in the world history, and this is only in the last century that something like this has happened. And so when I say, I'm not just talking out my ass when I say that the Sudanese boy becomes a symbol that motivates 100 or 1,000 Westerners to put their money where their mouth is, to contribute to international aid organizations, to do the political work that's necessary to ensure that kind of stuff isn't going to happen in the future. And I don't know if you're familiar with the report that came out of the University of British Columbia in 2006. What's it called? The Human Security Report. And they did an extensive study of trends in the world since the end of the Cold War. And contrary to what is generally believed, the amount of war, acts of genocide, arms sales, coup d'etats have dramatically decreased since 1991, 1992. By pretty much every measure of violence and conflict in the world has gone down since that time in a rather dramatic way. To me, that certainly should be one of that part of that 20% of the good news that makes it over the airwaves.
What are, according to you, the worst threats to society and the best resources? I mean, in a way, you have already replied to that, but apart from the dangerous prophets, other threats to society that you see very actual and very dangerous, what are they?
Well, it's a great question. I think to put some context in it, we're all together in this, and there's peace my Pronoia book, in which I talk about the seemingly evil people in the world, and I compare it to a story by Borges, the Argentinian writer, in which he talks about how Judas was actually uh, the more important player in that drama. Jesus got all the glory. Yeah, he suffered, but he got all the glory forever and ever. Where Judas had to play the part of the betrayer. He volunteered. He chose to play that because somebody had to play it in order for the tale to be played out in the way that it had to, complete with the resurrection and the redemption. And so, in a sense, Judas was just as important as Jesus was in that story. And so all the evil ones, this, and I put evil in quotes, they are part of the story that we as a human race are acting out, living out. And so on a personal level, I feel emotional revulsion against evangelical Christians and other fundamentalists who appear to be holding back the development of a more just society, a more tolerant society, a more open society. But from another point of view, we could say that pregnancy takes 9 months. If the child is born after 5 months, it's not a healthy child. The evangelical Christians are making sure that evolution doesn't happen too fast. They're making sure that the pregnancy lasts 9 months. So those evil people are, in a sense, conspiring with us to create the larger story, which is this unfolding toward greater liberation, greater openness, more love. So with that as the context, as I sink into my emotional biases, I would say fundamentalists are the greatest enemy of society. Even though they may be necessary for me, they're the most difficult to endure. And by fundamentalists, I mean anyone, whether it's a religious fundamentalist or anyone else who believes my belief system is the only belief system that's true and yours is wrong. Everyone else's is wrong. The way that I see the world is the only right way to see the world. And there are lots of fundamentalists, not just the religious ones.
Yes, this is a very important point. Can you explain in a simpler way to me? I mean, why they are useful in a way? The metaphor you've done of generating 9 months, 5 months.
They slow things down.
Yeah, they slow things down. Okay.
They keep things from happening too fast. The ripening has to take place over a period of time. That's not necessarily accessible to my conscious ego. I think it was, I quote some story about Henry Kissinger talking to Chiang Kai-shek many years ago, and somehow the subject of the French Revolution came up, and Kissinger said, "Well, what do you think about the French Revolution?" And Chiang Kai-shek, "It's too early to tell. we don't know yet." And in the 2004 election in the United States, a magazine called What is Enlightenment interviewed a number of religious figures about and posed this question. Some say this is the most important election in American history, George Bush versus John Kerry, that if Bush is elected again, this will be the end of America. And all but one of the religious leaders said, yes, this is the most important election in American history, and yes, it's crucial that George Bush not be elected. And the one who didn't say that was a Zen monk, and I can't remember his name, but he said, we don't know. This is just, human beings are dust in this long-term evolution and for any of us to pretend that we know what the turning point is, or who's evil and who's not, is presumptuous and arrogant. And I tend to lean more in that direction. Although at the same time, and this is the key paradox that I think is crucial for me to hold, which is that everything's perfect just the way it is. It's unfolding just the way it is. I'm getting everything that I need, as is everybody else, and everything's completely fucked up. And I'm going to work with all my passion to increase the levels of equality and justice and liberation in the world. And to me, to have both of those points of view and to live in the midst of them, that's where I live.
Yeah, because while you were talking, an example came to mind to me, a kind of rebuttal of your point of view about the fundamentalists. They can slow things down. They can be helpful in a way. And then it came to mind to me the guy, the researcher in the US who stopped the research, the funding of stem cell research, because according to him it was against,
Right.
and he went to the Supreme Court. And now one single guy, I'll call him a fundamentalist, stopped the reversal that the Obama administration was doing vis-a-vis of the stem cell, who was our probably only hope against Alzheimer,
Right.
Parkinson, and so on and so forth. So in a way, I have a hard time to see in that particular case how these fundamentalists are helping to ripen things better, or to better think about the consequences of many different
Well,
things.
I'm with you on that, on the individual issues too. Today, I think it was by Harry Reid in Nevada, the senator from Nevada, tried to get through the Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, and it failed by 3 votes. And to me, that's a tragedy. That it's just there are the people that are trying to prevent gay people from having equal rights are on the wrong side of history. It's going to happen sooner or later, just as blacks and whites could get married in America when they couldn't, and that was regarded as a travesty 40 years ago. We're going to look back 40 years from now and say, what were those people thinking? That gay people couldn't be married? That's absurd. So, temperamentally, I'm with you, and I also need to keep open that bigger picture, which is that even though I'm going to try as hard as I can to carry out the world I believe in, I also have to have humility in the face that there are forces bigger than me and evolutionary trends that surpass my ability to understand.
What some advices for a better living? You seem very apt to it, and you have talked. I've read you talking about meditation, for instance. I mean, how to exceed the fourth dimension without using drugs. And meditation is an important part of your life. Do you suggest it? Or do you have any other practical advice on how to better your life and how to increase your imagination? Any practical advice would be very much welcome.
Well, it's difficult to give a few words of practical advice, and I don't know about it in Italy, but people in America are just besieged by advice from experts about how to live better lives, and I hesitate to join their ranks.
Something you do to better your life. I mean,
but what I do to better my life, and I think that this works for anybody who wants to try it, is to ask every day how I can love better, how I can love more, and not in a sentimental way, not just feel some warm fuzzy feeling in one's body, but what specifically can I do to express a greater capacity for love, whether it's the people in my personal life, the people whose lives I touch through my writing or through my music. I think there's always room to grow that. There's always something you can do that you're not doing. And so that would be the first rule. And what goes along with that is to continually ask, what am I ignorant about? What am I missing? What am I stupid about? What unconscious behavior am I engaging in? And how is my shadow, my own inner ignorance and unrightness, how is that affecting my life, and what can I do to uncover what that ignorance is and maybe reshape it so that it's not hurting me, not darkening my life and the lives of other people. I think that's another question you can really ask pretty much every day and come up with a new insight. And for me, one of the best ways to do that is through observing one's dreams and tuning into my dreams, and because that's a constant fountain of information about what's going on in the unconscious. People that I'm very lucky. I have the luxury of not working at a 9-to-5 job and being able to spend my time pretty much how I choose to. And for people who are working 2 jobs or have 4 kids, it's not always a luxury that they have to question every day how they can address their own darkness. But you can always ask, how can I love better? How can I love more? That's something anybody can do, because that's something you can do in action. It's not something you do just at meditation. It's something you do in relation to other people, the people at work, your children, your parents. It's a very practical opportunity, again and again presented to you, to open your heart, empathize more, express greater compassion.
Okay, do you meditate yourself?
I do.
Which kind, may I ask?
Well,
Transcendental meditation, or I don't know.
no, there are various meditation exercises in the Western Hermetic tradition. I mean, there are many different kinds. As an example, there's something called the banishing ritual, in which the magician or the spiritual aspirant will imagine a pentagram of light in the 4 directions and invoke the presence of the highest God form that you can imagine. And there are prayers that go with this, or that sometimes I will use and sometimes I'll improvise on, depending on my mood. And it's a way to purify oneself of any inner tendencies that might resonate with evil or lack of integrity in the world around me. So it's a purifying ritual. And that's just an example of one meditation that I would do. If I'm working on a particular goal in my life, I might visualize the particular details of that goal, the concrete specific details of what that would entail, of what that outcome would be. But that's always leads to the question of, well, is that something that I have the right to ask for? Do I have the ethical integrity to ask for it? Is there anything I need to raise up in myself that would earn me the right, if perhaps I don't have the right? How does this affect other people? So for me, meditation may be a conversation between me and the goddess or the angelic forces, but it always entails some practical application of my life in the world with other people. So those are two. The banishing ritual would be a purification ritual. The visualization meditation would be a specific picturing of a particular goal. There'd be, I mean, there are a number of other things that involve meditating on one's own death is something that I'll do now and then. Meditation on my own past. Once a year I tend to revisit, I try to see my entire life, try to revisit all the memories in my life that I can imagine. And as you might imagine, the Western mystery tradition, which has been going for so many centuries, has any number of meditations that are available that may be more useful to me or more useful to you.
By the way, also Leonard Cohen has done a lot of meditation, and he has done that branch of meditation that also David Lynch does, and he's a huge testimonial. Yeah, exactly. Okay, last two questions. Judging from the position of the planets, is there anything in general that you can say about 2011? What will?
Yeah, there is something. I think there's been a very interesting configuration of planets that began this past year and is going to culminate in April and May of 2011, and that is Jupiter conjunct Uranus in Aries, and there'll be other planets in Aries at the same time for part of that phase. And I see this as a tremendously interesting potential to reinvent ourselves. And it's an aspect that could be shocking. It could bring in information or revelations that are completely unexpected. I tend to think that this WikiLeaks phenomena is a manifestation of this aspect. It's a revelation of many secrets that have long been kept hidden. In general, the entire practice of diplomacy has been filled with secrets from time immemorial. And now, for the first time, because of the internet and because of this greater availability of information, the underside of diplomacy is being exposed. So I think that this is one example of the kind of revelations, the kind of developments that could take place. And another one that I speculate on is the possible revelation of by world governments that the contact with non-human intelligence has been happening for perhaps hundreds of years, and we call it the UFO phenomenon. I'm not necessarily willing to call it people from other planets. I don't know what it is. I call it non-human intelligence. But I think that's one other possible kind of thing from out of nowhere, just that completely changes the whole conversation about what human life is about. I think that's another possible thing that could happen. I don't know if you probably don't follow this stuff, but
yes, but I've read something about that some agency, U.S. agency, which was dedicated to the search for non-human intelligence, kind of recently. I don't remember exactly, but it doesn't strike me so much.
Well, there's a number of generals and military people in the United States just came out about 6 weeks ago with the revelation that over the last 40 years, UFOs, or unidentified flying objects, have been very concerned with nuclear facilities around the world that have actually manipulated nuclear facilities in not only the United States but elsewhere. And this was military people in the United States. Anyway, that was one example of many revelations lately that may tend to indicate there's some new revelation that's going to happen in that sphere. But I think in general, the bigger picture is that whatever could be happening could come out of nowhere and just be something that science fiction people can't even predict. And I think in the long run it'll be exhilarating. It'll be transformative in mostly the best kind of ways, but it could also be shocking.
May we say that you were wrong vis-a-vis of President Obama, or do you still think that he's got a very good astrological juju? I mean, you were very optimistic about this, this astrological outcome, but I mean,
Did you read my interview with the San Francisco Chronicle, in which?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. I mean, the guy is having some problems right now.
Definitely. I don't know. I don't know in the long run. I think it's too early to tell. I think in the short run, he still remains a tremendously important archetypal figure for a black intellectual to be elected president, no matter what he does in the first 2 years and what he does in the next 2 years, is, to me, one of the most revolutionary things that's ever happened in American history. And that will never, we can never lose that. That's something that changed history for good. And it remains to be seen. To me, he squandered a lot of his capital, a lot of the political capital he had. He has disappointed me, as he has a lot of progressive people, and he hasn't been the progressive president that we hoped. I don't think that maybe I'm massaging my own memories, but I don't think that I necessarily believed he was a savior that was going to bring progressive vision into the American mainstream. I don't think that I thought that. I hoped that, but I didn't necessarily expect that. And so if I did say that, if I did say in that interview, and I don't remember specifically what it, but I thought that he would have, what I'm remembering, I thought that he would have some ability to avoid economic disaster. That's, I think, what I remember I said. And I'm not sure that's still not ahead of us, that economic disaster, but so far he has kept America from sinking into a second Great Depression. So there's that.
No, you're not massaging your memory. You said something which was very true also in that occasion. This kind of spiritual twist that he has, that he puts in everything he does, and I definitely agree with that. I mean, however the outcome will be, if you won't be re-elected next time, but I think that the change is for forever. I mean, it's something that was unbelievable, and the dose of idealism that he puts in everything he does. I mean, I think, at least according to me, it's out of beyond disbelief.
Yeah. Well, he may lose the next election because of his attempts to reach out and serve as a conciliatory person. That might, it looks absurd to us now, especially to the people on the left who don't want him to appease the Republicans. But from a certain point of view, I can think that he may be inserting into the American political discussion, a form of 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 working with one's enemy that will stay with us a long time. It'll serve as a model of something that is possible. It is possible for a human being in power to try to work with both sides. It looks crazy from December 2010. It looks weak. It looks like he's selling out the progressive position. But I just wonder whether in the long run it won't have some ennobling effect.
As the thing you were saying before about the fundamentalists, maybe we don't realize now, but in the long run, maybe
Right,
they will
exactly.
have.
But this is always true. The people that are reasonable are always at a disadvantage in arguing with the fanatics. The fanatics don't have any capacity to be reasonable or to see the other person's side. That's the seeming power of fundamentalism. So when someone is not a fundamentalist, when they are willing to say, well, maybe you do have a piece of the truth, that looks weak in the short run, and maybe it is weak, and it certainly may prevent you from winning the argument, but there's something that's medicinal about it.
Free will astrology. Free will astrology. You stress this free will part because in the classic perception of astrology, one of the major counter arguments from people who are rational, people like me, I don't know, is that we don't listen to the stars to decide what we do
Right.
in the art. What's your take? I mean, already your title is very telling, free will
Right.
astrology, but can you explain briefly to us what do you mean by that, by stressing free will?
It's a very big subject that beyond the scope of this conversation in its entirety, but I will say that I think different people have more free will than other people. And what that means is that they are more or less free from some of their unconscious compulsions, from the conditioning they've absorbed from their family, from their religion, from the groups they've been a part of. Some people are more or less liberated from the unconscious patterns that control other people. In that sense, the first group has more free will. And one of the advantages of studying astrology is to know what the cosmic tendencies are so as to take maximum advantage of them. If Pluto is square Uranus, as it's going to be for the next few years, that in a person who's unconscious, that could lead them to, I'm oversimplifying here, but if a person is just held hostage by his own unconscious imprints, has no negotiation with his own shadow, is acting out of the ignorant programming that was inculcated into him throughout his upbringing, well, there's probably going to be more strife caused by that Uranus-Pluto square. The person who is aware that there's a Uranus-Pluto square and what the potential of that very powerful configuration is, and says, well, I'm going to use this to build my stamina. I'm going to be aware that there's going to be tremendous oppositional forces that are going to be ripe for either conflict or conciliation. That there's a tremendous amount of energy in this configuration. I'm going to use it to, with consciousness, with an eye to express it in its highest form. and not be held hostage by, oh, that makes me angry. I can't stand that. I'm just going to act in the rashest, most impulsive way. And in that sense, to know astrological configurations can contribute to the exercise of liberation, of using one's will in a conscious way that serves the greater good.
So, in a word, to simplify even more, it's a supplement of knowledge
Yes.
that can be
Sure.
used by this person in order to uh, behave in the most sensible way.
And he who doesn't study history is doomed to repeat it. And it's a similar principle. If you know what has happened in similar situations in Uranus square Pluto in the past, and you can study history to see what it's led to in the past, that may give you the ability to avoid the lower expressions of it and to gravitate toward the higher expressions of it.